should be with us the next meeting. We'll move to item 2018-218, conduct a public hearing and consider an act upon an ordinance for a specific use permit for a water well, lots 1 through 7, block 1 of the Stonegate addition.
Thank you, sir. Once again, this is a public hearing for a specific use permit for a water well in accordance with section 2.04. Any property seeking to use a water well for any purpose on the property is required to apply for a specific use permit. This request has come in. The main purpose of this water well is to use it for the water features on site for the Stonegate Church property. Staff did mail out 15 notices to all property owners within 200 feet. 0 came back in opposition, 0 came back in favor. This does meet all the requirements mandated by our ordinance, as well as all their outlying requirements. Staff does recommend approval, and I can answer any questions at this time.
Questions?
Is there just one? I couldn't really tell.
Yes, there's just one water well located on the site.
For one water feature?
I believe there's just the one water feature. This is where the water well will be located on the site. Down here on the south.
This passed 6-0. Any other questions? Motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approval and a second. Record your votes, please. And it does pass 6-0. Thank you.
The proposed restaurant will not be adding anything onto the building. There will not be any additions onto the structure itself. Once again, this is within an existing structure. Previously, there was a laundromat in this location. Through the years, this has transitioned from one use to another. Currently in the same complex, there are similar uses. There's a donut shop, a burger restaurant. There's a convenience store at the end of it. Part of this process, as we went through, staff is not making recommendations to change the exterior of the building since it's already existing. They will be required to meet all building code requirements as we're going to do a finish out on the property on the inside, and that'll be done during the building permit process. Some other conditions that we've added on the specific use permit that the owner or applicant has agreed to. As you can see right here, this is where the Thai restaurant will be located. This is 9th Street. Here's the convenience store. We've requested from the developer. Right now, there's an existing dumpster on site that's been there for many years, for quite a long time. That has not had a dumpster enclosure. As part of this, will be adding a dumpster enclosure of masonry material to match the building material to be added to the site. As you can see, that's in the top left. That's right here in this corner. You'll have a dumpster enclosure there, meeting our requirements. Also, we've required as part of the specific use permit to mark this fire lane. And also on right here, what's going on right now on this property is that people will come in here, will kind of do a donut, roundabout, makeshift, and back out. Well, the problem is this is someone else's property that they do not own. And due to there's no cross-access easement there, there's no agreement. We've required as part of the specific use permit to put some sort of parking ballards there to prohibit future trespassing onto that property to prevent that in the future. However, we did put language in the specific use permit ordinance that if there's ever in the future they can do an agreement, a cross-access easement, or some other agreement to allow for these cars to enter in this property at this point, that they can be removed as part of that. They won't be required to come back in through a process to remove the ballards, but as long as they have some sort of agreement in place, those can be removed. We did mail notices to all property owners within 200 feet. 0 came back in favor, 0 came back in opposition. They do meet all minimum parking standards for the site for a restaurant to be added. And that does include the parking count for all other uses in the structure at this point. So with all the other uses combined, the proposed restaurant, they will still meet our minimum parking requirements. Staff does recommend approval, and and this does require a public hearing, I can answer any questions at this time.
Did you check and see how wide those parking spaces are?
I believe we. Can't remember if these were 10 or 9.5.
That's fine.
I couldn't give a concrete answer.
I know it's pretty tight
Right.
in there, so.
So where do they have their deliveries? Where do delivery trucks, how do they move around on that little piece of property? Obviously, the restaurants need somebody to deliver stuff.
So we have ingress and egress right here. Coming through here is one option, or also coming up through here. And that's an existing standard for the property, or an existing condition of the property.
So that's where they take deliveries. Isn't that don't they have a window for the donut place too?
Right, there's 2 lanes.
Oh, there is?
So they can take deliveries either this way or this way.
Is that what's turning around out there, is delivery trucks, or is it?
Well, there's also a drive-through
patrons?
right here.
Well, no, I meant out in the dirt.
It's also.
No, this is patrons parking here. They'll come out, turn around, and come back out here.
Do you know why?
I couldn't answer.
You know,
Why?
because it's real hard to get around.
Yeah, I do it.
Yeah.
You will
Because
see,
that's not supposed to be that.
in a larger truck, it is easier, actually, in some cases, we've even parked out there. Cause it's just so tight in there. I don't understand.
It's dirt.
Yes, sir, it is dirt. We have not done it in muddy conditions. Well, how does so if you're gonna put the ballards at the end of the slab line, is it just gonna be on that section that you've outlined there?
Yes, sir.
So what's to keep?
Mine for moving around though.
Yeah, what's to keep me from being back in here and backing out, and I can't get backed out because there's another long truck in hanging out there? So what's to keep me from coming and there's not a car there and just going right across here and coming over here?
Right, there's nothing keeping you from coming up here either.
Sir?
Curbs.
The wheel stops. I'll go right over that.
Right, right.
That's not, I got a four-wheel drive truck. I'm just wondering, I see that these bump stops to me are a little bit more of a hindrance for most people, as I'm wondering why you wouldn't have this.
We could add that there as well.
I'm not
It doesn't
saying you
matter
need
us.
to, it's just a question,
Right.
why you wouldn't go ahead and have it on this entire length, something that's simple, it wouldn't have to be super heavy duty. And my other concern,
Right, the bump stops exist on that.
Pardon?
There's bump stops, as Mr. Kaufman was saying, there's bump stops following here, right here, and
I
kind of
think,
stops right here.
I'm in agreement, I just think we're gonna find that people are gonna keep going, they're gonna go around what we've marked so far. I think it's a great idea. As Jimmy Lou, I think if I were driving a delivery van truck with a 30-foot trailer on it, I wouldn't wanna try to come down, especially between the dumpster and through this alley, and turn that trailer right here.
Right.
So I'm gonna be prone, and I've seen the trucks, they pull right up in here, they empty, but I would be prone to drive that, I would only have a choice, cause I'm not gonna back the truck out on the street. I'm gonna drive it right down here and do the U-turn and come out. So how will those food trucks that have a 30-foot van on the back, how are they gonna get back out on the road now?
I mean, the same condition would arise if, under the current zoning, by right, the restaurant was less than 1,000 square feet, they'd be able to do a restaurant by right, and so they'd have the same issue at that point in time. And running these issues with these structures that are existing, that meet the minimum standards, are really just how do you fix that unless they buy more land or remove part of their building to try to address some of those issues.
So we can't require trucks, if they're gonna pull in out front on the curb in some way, and then they would have to, I don't see how trucks are gonna get out of there, once this is taken away.
Can't do that through the SUV process.
Okay, that's fine.
And I think you see the same thing like down where in the shopping center where the subway is, sometimes they just have to
Yeah,
pull in, they
that's
just have to
terrible.
right back out because they can't do anything. And it's the same situation, I agree. You see trucks parked right there by the convenience store and they unload and then they either gotta back out.
They don't have a choice, so
Or turn around,
I
yeah.
mean, the ideal situation would be, having some sort of agreement in order to use that property for turning around or for some sort of mixed-use development.
It's gonna get muddy too sooner or later, and they're gonna be dragging
I
mud.
think the bigger concern is fire truck. I mean, other than the delivery truck, fire truck would be it. But
We did have the fire marshal in the meeting,
Yeah.
we don't have a fire right now.
this is sort of off topic
They-
because we're supposed to be
I-
talking about the.
I've not ever seen that drive blocked by truck. Usually they park in the front or one of those places. Now they'll block the gas pump sometimes, but usually they do. And so it's been there for years and I've been dealing with it, so.
So, but if the slugs start backing out into the street, is that something that the police are gonna get involved in, or does it, do we just say you can't back out?
You're not
You gotta
addressing
figure
you're addressing the use right now.
Yeah.
The use has been, that use has been in existence, and if there's an issue with people backing out in the street, that's obviously would be an issue with impeding traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they would be involved, obviously, if there's an accident or anything, I don't know that there's anything we can do to prevent them from backing out onto the street, anyway.
Quite often they park on the edge of the street, on the apron, and there's a ditch like that, and they deliver out there. So I mean, that use has existed since that building's been there, so
Yeah.
it's not an issue. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on that?
I do have one question myself. I can't hear you. Okay, we're gonna have 5 businesses in there.
Yes, sir.
And I only see one handicapped parking slot, is that?
So according to
Okay.
ADA requirements, they don't do it per business, they do depend upon how many parking spaces are for the entire development. They would be required to meet all ADA requirements, I believe it's 1 per 45 spaces. It has to be van accessible, which that one spot does meet van accessibility requirements of ADA.
Okay.
Motion to.
Questions,
I have
motion?
a statement, I'm so glad that that's gonna be closed for trash dump, because there's still a lot of trash blowing around.
I agree.
When the wind hits, that blows further into the southern portion of the community. Glad to see that happen.
I'll motion to approve.
Second?
I have a motion for approval and a second. Record your votes, please. And it does pass 6-2.
I just want to make a quick correction. If it does require another ADA space, we're going to double check the numbers on that. They won't be required to comply with that. We'll make sure that.
Because you're gonna have a lot more people
Yes, sir.
in that building, in that restaurant.
Right, and we'll make sure that number is met.
Good. And thank you, like Jimmy said, for bringing up the issue with the dumpster.
Thank you.
We'll move to 2018-220, conduct a public hearing and consider an action on an ordinance changing the zoning of 6.158 plus or minus acres from agricultural zoning district to planned development district number 61.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The subject property is an extension of the existing Autumn Run subdivision. A total of 17 additional residential lots with, well, I guess let me move to this slide here. The typical lot width of these new 17 lots will range from 80 feet to 84 feet in width. There will be some open space that's also being added to this existing development. This would bring the total count of all residential lots to 210 residential homes, or residential lots, and 5 open space lots as well. There are no thoroughfares in this area, but there is a connection being made between Bird Branch Road and Mystic Trail, as you can see in this location here. This would add an additional 0.8 acres of open space to be maintained by Autumn Run. You can see that designated in the green area as well. The fencing regulations do state that wrought iron fencing would be required on the back sides of these homes that are going to be adjacent to the proposed open space. This right here is essentially a breakdown of this request and how it's going to essentially affect the overall development. We did send out 37 PONs, property owner notifications, and we have not received any responses. Staff does recommend approval of the requested rezone and the extension of these boundaries. On June 19th, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval 7-0 for this proposed request with the condition, and I've placed this up here also as well, that the designated open space become usable open space, possibly with the trail system. If not possible, then an alternative usable open space of the same size shall be provided on the subject property. And with that, I can take any questions that you
Is
may have.
any trail system within that?
There is no trail system per the actual PD right now. Now, the applicant has reached out to Atmos. And from what the applicant has told me, they have the authorization probably to move forward with something like this, to add a trail system in that this one green section that you see here on the screen. But there is a process. They're more or less seeking the authorization right now. This is very similar to what we did in Lawson Farms, just a little bit further down to the south. Lawson Farms have a very long Atmos easement that runs through that, and a trail system was approved by Atmos to be installed.
Marco's got a question for you. Is this also, I mean, I assume this is the gas line?
Yes, sir.
For Atmos.
Absolutely.
What would happen with the remaining? Because right now, in the original development, this and this were not included as a trail system, correct?
Absolutely, sir. So, when you look at, and I'll show you here on the screen, you can see there's a community park, not a community park, but a park designated for their HOA maintained park. Essentially, what the applicant is only proposing right now is that this trail system run from this leg of the street all the way up 738 feet to connect that to that park. When you look at the overall, yeah, we do not have any type of designated trail system that runs on the south side or on this north side. Ultimately, you wouldn't be able to necessarily really connect to Lawson Farms Trail on the other side of 663, mainly because even Lawson Farms, it stops short of going all the way up to 663 and kind of curves back into their neighborhood.
Is that development between the crossover on 663 and Lawson Farms already fully developed?
I'm sorry, Councilman Rogers, say that one more time?
Well, you were just talking, and I understand what you were stating is that this, if this were to become a full trail system,
Yes, sir.
it wouldn't necessarily connect into Lawson Farms, because Lawson Farms is a little too far to the south.
Yes, sir.
But
Absolutely.
I'm thinking there's a lot of vacant land on the other side of 663 between Lawson Farms and there.
It should be Hawkins Meadow.
This is Hawkins Meadows falls right here in this area. The trail system, or the Atmos line kind of goes to the south, it makes a slight turn, and then it continues. I see what you're saying. Like
I'm
lanes
saying
to
if
the
this
south.
isn't developed, are we able to apply some pressure, a little bit of pressure through the PD system, or however those developments would fall? I'm assuming they will probably be more on the retail side, more than
Yeah.
likely on development.
Well, I think that is,
Well,
I think
If
this
there's a
is-
way to have a crossover and a way to connect that back into Lawson Farms is all I'm asking.
Could we bring up
Well,
Google Earth?
you can actually,
It's not something we need to really worry about at this moment,
Well,
it's just a thought.
I think this is Lawson Farms right there.
Yeah, Lawson
So,
Farms.
the problem being that we would have to connect to another development
Right.
with the property owner just to the south of Autumn Run. If that property ever developed, there's gonna be that same gas easement through that property, I
There
would
would
assume.
be. Yes, sir, absolutely.
And that's probably where, at that point, we could take the trail down through the next property to the south and connect
So the
with
gas
Lawson
easement,
Farms.
the same gas line that's running through Lawson Farms is what you're saying?
I think so, yeah, it should run, it should be the same gas line, easement,
This
if I'm
one's
not
just-
mistaken.
Yeah, so this is where Lawson, get that settled. You can kind of see where the gas line runs this direction here. It stops here and kind of curves back into Lawson Farms. So there's still open space here, but no trail has been established there. Essentially, you can kind of see that comes
Yeah.
Well,
this direction,
and-
you would have to redevelop.
Yes,
this
it's
area.
this property owner that would make the connection, cause here would be Autumn Run, stops right here. You would have to connect down and then get across. It would wait, if this property ever developed right here, we could make the connection.
But that doesn't connect into what, is that Hunter's Glen?
Hunter's Glen, the gas easement does go into Hunter's Glen.
Yes.
And if the city ever decided to connect that, they could go up to, and then there's a light up there in front of Kroger, and there may be one, someday at Autumn Run. And, to go across.
So it gets to the question of, I mean, I know something like this, where we're talking about the 738 feet, you know, that would be HOA maintained, obviously. Once the city gets involved in also adding their trail system, I guess the question remains, is it an HOA lot or is it city maintained, city maintained trail? You know?
Well, doesn't the HOA have to maintain it now?
Yes, they would.
It's HOA, and I think that we have an opportunity, we just spent some money to do connectivity. And so if we have an option to put pieces of trails in, we need to do
Oh, yeah,
that.
Well, I was gonna say, is the applicant and developer in this case, while he is seeking Atmos's, permission to put this in, would they also go ahead and grant him permission on both, the ends of his property? I know he can't go and ask for, a development that's not his, but it'd be nice if we go ahead and get permission on this part and this part.
Well, when I talked to the
I was
applicant.
gonna ask him that,
Sure. The applicant may want to answer that, but let me see if I can answer.
not that he'll have to put it in, but that he-
Well, at
he'll
least
get
grant the
that.
easement. If we
Right.
could get the easement granted, get the easement approved, we could extend that authorization to include that northern part and that southern part,
Right.
if we're already asking the question now. Now, the question of, are they on the hook for building it also, that's another question. From what I understand, I know, in this particular case, I would think that the applicant would definitely be on the hook for those 700 feet.
That 700 feet, yeah.
Absolutely.
We did not ask him when we approved the PD for the other, but if out of the goodness of his heart or something.
Absolutely.
I know, I'm sorry. Do you wanna come up and speak, Mr. Jones?
I can. Charles Joel, 1812 Woodruff Drive, Arlington. What we've got, we did go to Atmos. Atmos previously would not allow anything within their easement, okay? Now, what we've agreed to do, and the HOA has agreed to do, is mow all their easement, okay, for crossings and such. But they did agree to let us build this section right here, because I'd go back to them and talk with them. We don't have it in writing as of yet. And we can build a walkway there, it's 6 foot, probably concrete walkway along this area right here.
Right.
I can't speak to the balance of it. The balance of it's basically grass, okay? And, we've already started the development of that, but the only place that we would actually have it is right here at this particular location. But the city would, at some point in time, if they ever did a trail system, could work that out with Atmos.
Well, we're doing a trail system, and we have it on Atmos easement in Lawson Farms, and what we were asking was, since you're talking to them and negotiating with them, if you would ask them if we can have the right to put that, we're not asking you to put the trail in.
I think I can work that out, Mayor. But they've taken a totally different position. When we originally went in there, we talked to them about it, they wouldn't allow it. I can do that and then get back with, planning.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can just get back to the planning staff.
That'd be fine.
I think if we just had the authorization to put the trail in, again, we can't require you to put it in at this point, but we would like to have the authorization on either side of the development.
I don't think that'll be a problem, and I can, discuss it with the people that I'm dealing with there. And, then get back with planning and just tell them that you wanna do a trail system all along their easement and see if they can give me some kind of, confirmation in writing. Cause you know, their systems change all the time. Today we probably can, tomorrow we probably can't. You know what, how that goes.
Well, either one of those guys there, they can help you get that.
All right. I'll do
All
it.
right,
Thank you
thank
very
you,
much.
Mr.
Thank
Payne.
you.
This is a public hearing. Is anyone interested in speaking? If not, I have a motion to close public hearing. In a second, record your votes, please. It does pass 6-0. Any additional questions or motions? Approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval and a second. Record your votes, please. And it does pass 6-0. We'll move to 2018-221, conduct a public hearing and consider and act upon an ordinance amending and restarting the development and use regulations of planned development district number 100.
Thank you. I just kind of bring back to all your recollection. This planned development is located on FM 663 on the east side of the road. This is for a self-storage development. That's what the PD was originally for. Here's showing the property across from the elementary school, showing the advantages of the PD 100. Previously, when they first came about, they brought forth this plan showing a primary structure where the office would be located for the leasing. They're going to have a residence located in this portion, surrounded by a masonry wall around the entire property. Each structure is going to be 100% masonry. It's all going to be all enclosed storage. Recently, we've received an application, that's what's before you today, is an amendment to that existing planned development district for storage units. This is what they looked like previously. You can see that facade, masonry facade going all around, sloped roofs, various architectural elements. When they came back just recently, they requested a different site plan, bringing these buildings closer to the street, adding more landscaping along the frontage of the road, bringing their signage to meet our sign standards. They were getting rid of that residential component instead of residential, and instead of the storage units being the front of the property, of what you see from the frontage road, the front of the structures will be, as you can see, here's the landscaping along FM 663. These will be offices for property owners, for people to rent out, for business professional. Behind here is where the self-storage will be located. Any unit being able to be seen from the right-of-way will be 100% masonry. Outside of that, they will consist of various types of material, metal, stucco, etc. When we brought this before Planning and Zoning Commission, we had recommended a wrought iron fence. It's a masonry / wrought iron fence along the perimeter of the property. Similar to this, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended just be a masonry wall instead of a wrought iron / masonry wall with vegetative screening. That masonry wall is going to be located right along here. Planning and Zoning Commission thought that there was enough screening already in place, vegetative screening with trees, to go ahead and block that view from that shed corridor. Staff going back and forth with the applicants, we went back and forth during the design process and really broke the front. They came back with different kind of roofs to kind of break it up. Give it a softer appeal on FM 663, adding architectural elements such as the canopies, seeing what curved roofs on some of them, so they're not all matching every single building is. Staff does recommend approval of the proposed amendments, and we do also recommend what Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended, just making that a masonry wall and having to maintain those existing trees that are there now. That is not part of, right now, that's not part of the ordinance, that would be part of your recommendation, is to agree with P&Z's recommendation. We do mail out 6 notices to all property owners within 200 feet. 0 come back in favor, 0 come back in opposition. And I can answer any questions at this time.
So the question is the wall on the, I guess it would be the east side of the property, the back side of the property would be the east.
Correct, yes.
That is pretty heavily wooded.
Right.
Do you have this associated on perhaps a Google showing on maps, showing us from a satellite aerial how this sits on there?
So we don't have the CAD drawing showing it on the Google. We don't have the overlay showing what it would look like over our satellite imagery or the aerial imagery.
You just wanted to see like the Google Earth
I'm
shot
trying
of the
to, I know
property.
that corner, but I'm trying to, I know the tree line on the
Once again,
back.
it's off the corner. It's not on the hard corner.
Yeah, it's right.
It's right next to the Baptist
It's
church.
just to the south of the Liberty Baptist Church.
Is what they're doing now all of their property that's in the green zone, or a portion of it?
It's going to stop approximately right here.
Okay.
There's a water feature, right, a natural water feature right here, that they're not going to be encroaching into. The previous amendment actually included that as part of it, building around it, using it as part of their development. And now they decided to try to avoid that, bring it all forward to avoid that.
On the previously, I actually went back and looked at that agenda item, and you showed it, well, the detention pond. Is there no requirement for the detention pond at this point? I thought there were some drainage issues that was gonna help alleviate for the other property owners.
This detention pond right here.
Yeah.
Yes. They'll have to look at doing some kind of assessment, whether it's downstream or on-site, doing on-site detention.
So they are gonna still have to do something with that.
It's still going to meet all of our civil requirements, and that occurs during the platting stage. When you plat the property, and when you submit your civil documents,
Oh, really?
we usually
Well,
look at all the
I thought
drainage
it was
on
the
there.
original plan,
It
when they
was,
came in with
because
the
we
deed,
had-
we looked at it.
Right.
There were some issues with the body shop
Yeah.
and stuff, with the drainage going down there. And if you're putting that much concrete without doing that detention pond, it's, I don't wanna flood out the body shop.
Pardon me, Trent, we do actually have a detention pond in that location, with the preliminary grading and drainage that we submitted with the PD.
Similar to what you had in the first one?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
It didn't show, this agenda item did not show that, this reason I asked. Tell me again, on the masonry fence, does it go all the way around?
No.
Is that what they're saying?
Just the end.
Only on the south side?
Right, yes.
What about between there and the church?
Right here, right now there's existing landscaping, they're adding landscaping buffer, and this is all gonna be masonry wall. Anything, it's all gonna be masonry, anything from
So
the
it will be buildings then?
Right, everything you don't see, basically, these internal walls right here, these are the only items right here that will not be masonry throughout the whole development.
Those will be visible from the street.
Right. So, and that's why we're not requiring a masonry wall right here, is because anyone viewing the property from this angle is gonna have the same effect as if they saw a masonry wall, because the back of the building is gonna be complete masonry.
Can you discuss what, you say is it general professional businesses only?
Yes.
And that, what's underneath that?
General professional, it's really light commercial uses that you would see. You would see, professional office, very light retail, nothing that would have a huge impact on the surrounding area. That's generally, general professionals is usually the commercial use that you have abutting a residential neighborhood.
Okay. And across from the school,
Right.
and the church?
And that is something that we actually did look into quite a bit. The staff did talk about with professional office being located in the front as kind of how this is designed for, right here.
Where is the office building or that, one of the storage?
These are the office buildings. The storage, I assume, would be located.
The small one at the end is for storage?
Right here?
No, that's storage, and the other two are office.
So there's 4 or 5
There's
office
still
structures.
1,
No.
2, 3, 4.
And each one of those will only hold one business?
I'm sure if they broke it up, they could have possible,
I'm just trying to.
a couple of suites there.
What's the traffic volume? That's where I'm headed, because we're across from a school, and we've gotten away from, because if I remember the original proposal, this is gonna be all storage, correct?
The original proposal was going to be all storage.
And now we're getting into retail slash, professional.
Mhm.
So that, to me, spells more people throughout the day versus just storage. So what kind of impact is that gonna have on school traffic and a road that's already way overloaded?
Once again, there hasn't been a traffic study done on this section
Do
of
we have
63.
any idea from staff, do we even know what this is gonna bring in as far as car tally a day? Do we know?
I didn't know the exact number, not until.
Not
we-
exact, but
No,
some
it-
feel for what's gonna
I
happen.
mean, generally with your lighter commercial uses, it's gonna have a low impact on the commercial coming in. These aren't large suites.
So these
So
are
just-
basically gonna be a little CPA firm.
Possibly things like that are what are generally gonna, each office is gonna be.
Suites, that's what the multiple roofs were for, the kind of multiple entrances. The ideas are, accountants, electrical contractors, just small professional offices, no retail, no frontage.
So I'm thinking in my mind, if you've got 30,000 square feet, which is what I think you just said.
Yes, sir.
Even if you've got I'm trying to develop, how many offices are we talking here on 30,000 square feet?
I can go through all that if you'd like. I know you haven't opened it to the public hearing yet, but I can.
Sir?
We can have the applicant come up here and.
Yeah, please,
talk to you more.
please.
Just give us your name and address.
Absolutely, sir. Hey, my name's Donald Jones, and, I reside at 4216 Little Bend Corridor in Keller. Just so you know how, I came about this, I've been in the industry, in the self-storage industry for 25 years. So, it may not seem like it, but I have, promise. And so, I've done work literally from Hawaii to Boston to Willis, North Dakota, down to South Florida, etc. But the Metroplex in Texas is home for me, so I get it, and I'm listening very specifically, Mr. Rogers, to your concern. When we came into this particular opportunity, we looked at the original site plan, and from a self-storage perspective, it just flat doesn't work. You have all these buildings and a lot of wasted space, driveway space, and a lot of land space that's essentially wasted. What we were trying to do was tighten up the what was being provided. And so as you notice, we're using half of the lot that was originally designed. And then on that very first, on the first thing that was set up initially, let's go back to here. So when this part was set up initially, the residence was gonna be right here. And even though this wasn't specifically dedicated or determined at the time of the PD was issued, there was certainly an opportunity for whoever built this to come back into the front portion here, visit with the council and determine what else could be put in there. So it wasn't a case where nobody was gonna build there. But again, when I saw this initial plan, I just felt like it wasn't going to be productive use of space. I also knew that there was a lot of concern from the residents back to the east behind that particular tree line, that there were gonna be water problems and other issues. So we wanted to try to curtail that by shortening up the project. On this particular setup, what we're talking about specifically right now, on these two buildings here, these are two 15,000 square foot buildings, and essentially what you have is, you have huge parking space around here, but these are designed for your farmer's insurance, for your abstract company, for, a lawyer, an turning, things like that. These could be broke up into as small as 1,000 square feet, or maybe as much as 5,000 square feet, just something small offices. So if you think about the day-to-day activity with those folks, and I don't know what time the school gets started, but I have a pretty good idea when it shuts down. But there should be a little bit of offset relative to the traffic. The business professional is gonna come in at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and be there during the course of the day, where the school kids are gonna arrive a little bit before that. Hopefully traffic lightens up a bit, and then the professionals are gonna leave at 5. And certainly the area should lighten up again at that point. There was a lot of conversation during the P&Z section of this. We talked about traffic a lot, and there was 2 different items being bantered back and forth, if you will. One is your specific comment. We're full now, the traffic's gonna get worse, what are we gonna do to fix this? And then the offsetting part, and I don't remember the gentleman who was talking about it, said, look, if the way it is right now, the state or whoever the controlling entity is for 663 isn't going to come in and fix anything. So do you allow it to continue to get just a little bit tighter before, so that way the state will take more notice of what the concern really is? If it stays exactly the way it is today, it's not gonna change either. The roads are not gonna get expanded. But I'm just sharing the argument that was posed at the time. On the self-storage world, it's a very light use relative to people coming in and out, and weekend traffic, and then during the day, it's just, 5 to 7 cars, maybe 20 cars a day, and they'll be sporadic. But as far as a professional office, it's at least being proposed. It's for that type of office, not retail, but your attorney, your CPA, your abstract company, those type of things. And there just shouldn't be that much traffic associated with it.
Well, it depends on what kind of businesses go in there, and that road is, actually, we have to have a police officer there every day because of the traffic coming out of the school.
Sure.
And, the traffic, they just put a red light in just to the south of that, and, I can't see, we need at least turning lanes or something on there, because it's a dangerous area.
Yeah,
And you're gonna have trucks with trailers, people hauling stuff into the storage, boats, different things like that, and it's,
Where is the ingress egress?
I was looking for
in
that.
conjunction with
Do you have the ingress
663
egress
and
that
school?
shows where the?
It lines up exactly with the school across the street,
They
both curb
line
cuts.
it up with the south entrance to the school, which they don't use, they use that as an exit, they don't use it as.
The text line includes both those entrances?
Yeah.
So they, go ahead.
TxDOT, they approve of those entrances.
Right.
Are you still working
Right there.
with TxDOT?
So we've got traffic coming out there and on the other side too.
Yeah, on the, from the school, yeah, the traffic comes out at that.
I will agree that I think that the timeline doesn't quite match up with the traffic flow. And, personally, I live over there and I drive this route 5, 6, 7 times a day. And this setup is much more appealing of a visual structure than the original plan. The big brick wall, I would much rather have the nice office spaces being the thing that you see.
One of the things we talked about a little bit was the school, and if you go, I don't know if your kids attended here or not, but every time you have an activity here, the parking lot's full, people are parking in the grass across the street,
In the
they're trying to
church.
walk across the thing, and so that becomes an issue by itself. One of the reasons, or in part of our design, we actually included extra parking space, at the front here. We have more parking spaces on this lot than what is required, with the intention that if the school wanted to use it on their functions and stuff, that people could park here safely and get back across the street too. So there's plenty of overflow traffic at the school that is not going to matter to us.
They're not allowed to park on that side of the road anymore, so we stopped that.
I'm very glad.
Really?
On the east side of the road?
They park everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
I mean, there may be a sign,
I
but
mean,
It's not like it used to be. They, it's not even in the
They park in the
parking lot.
grass. They park along the street, they
Oh,
park at
really?
Liberty Baptist, they park on the backside along in my neighborhood. They're right by my house, everywhere. It's insane. But,
So how many units, how many square footage of storage are you looking at? We talked 30,000 on office, but what's the ratio?
Yeah, the plus or minus the storage is, right here, you're looking at, 86, the total project, that's 86,000 gross for the phase one. So as far as storage units, it's, 86,000 with 70,000 net rentable square feet is about 500 to 600 storage units, depending on the size of each of the storage units.
can you tell me approximately, approximately how far off the street the gated entrance would be to the actual storage units? Because if there was some sort of backup, getting those trucks and trailers off of the
Yeah, make
street.
sure there's a queuing area, so
Yeah.
from the gate right here, all the way back to the front here. Chris, do you have a number? It's gotta be 200 plus feet. It's a long way from the street here.
It's 150 feet.
150. So queuing area, that'd be almost 2 semi-tractors.
Now, I know the goal is, architectures and, white collar businesses, but if I was Domino's, I'd love to have a location there right close to Red Bud. Is there a way
I don't know what falls
to
under
make
the-
sure that
under the
like
G-
that doesn't happen?
Under the GP, zoning district, a restaurant under 1,000 square feet would be permitted by right, as long as they can meet those requirements.
So that's my biggest concern, is that we're viewing it as though these folks have offices and they come in their one car and they park out at 8 and they sit there all day on the phone and nobody comes and they go home at 5 and oh great, they missed all the traffic. I have to travel out there every day to feed livestock and it is a disaster. I've nearly been T-boned, I don't know how many times, just by making up my mind, I'm going out in front of them whether they like it or not. If you can go back to I think it was the drawing showing the yellow, yeah, that right there. Okay, so I wanna make sure I understand, is this space out here, what's the distance there? What's that setback for? Is that for future expansion out here? Is it non-usable? What's that for? That area?
The original PD, I believe they did leave that for future expansion. And how the original PD had it as was the base zoning was commercial and not general.
This is my concern.
Yeah, we still have it as a base, we still have it as a base of.
Right, it's supposed to be
It's not general professional.
It's supposed to be general professional.
What I'm concerned about is we're talking about this right now, correct?
That's the old layout.
But what I'm getting at is I understand this. So this right here now has moved all the way up to here, correct, as far as this? This is literally on FM 663, because that was my next question, was my concern. This is now going to be consumed by this building structure, correct? And from FM 63 back, right?
That, what you're saying is correct, but also look at it just from the opposite side. This is the plan that's approved right now today, and so I don't want to be argumentative or persuasive, but the reality is this could be built today, and is this a better plan than what this might be?
Well, my primary concern for asking the question is to make sure I was on board that this isn't for future expansion. Because then if this were where this structure is, then this would all become retail also, and then we would have a mess on our hands.
Yes, since this is zone commercial, since that's zone commercial, I assume that we could come in and anything that would be zone
It
commercial.
was actually, when it was originally zoned, it was zoned commercial, and then anything that was built there would have to come back.
Based on the PD.
Yes.
So you'd have to still come back in and get approved, but it's still zone commercial. But this, to Mr. Kaufman's comment, this is a softer look overall.
We could limit it, since we limit the uses of general professionals.
Yeah, it's basically, we're not interested in
To address kind of what Mike
Don't-
was saying, wasn't it?
don't-
it
we're
was
not
originally
interested in
like
restaurants.
250
You can offer a limit.
663, now it's up to 70.
We're not
It's
interested in retail either.
250 to begin with. That was one of the reasons I voted against it when it first came.
One of the comments, I'm sorry, Mr. McClure, one of the comments was we could limit and say no restaurants, we could say no retail for sure. One of the things that was brought up before, and I don't, you have vape places coming in all over the place, vapor places, and because it's near the school, you can't have that. There are things that, by code, you can't have, and so we could go back and look specifically what general retail or general business or professional business allows, and we could earmark some of those things and say, look, we're not gonna do the dominoes, and we're not gonna do something that's kind of a higher end business use. That's
Well, one thing I've
that's not a
learned
problem for
through
us.
this whole SUP process, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong in my thinking. If we're going to, I don't know that alcohol sales would be allowed this close to a school.
Unless there was a waiver was granted, correct. I don't know the distance, but I'm
It's too close
assuming
to
it's
the
too
school
close.
and the
yeah.
church, and so it's prohibited naturally.
Okay.
Because this isn't a planned development, we could limit because right now it's underlying zoning of commercial, which commercial use would be allowed, but we could limit the uses that go into those storefronts to general professional. And I don't know the category off the top of my head of general professional, but does that answer some of the concerns?
Well, general professional would still allow for restaurants.
Okay.
You could do professional office uses.
Well, like, when we've done other UVPDs before, and again, I'm talking about a UVPD, not a typical PD, but a lot of times we'll have language in there that says, that this can only be used and developed solely for a professional office or whatever, warehouse. But it'll limit it to only those two uses. And you couldn't do any other use under the general professional category or commercial category or any other category. for
Well,
that.
basically, the things that he said that were attracting was, professional office.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they said they liked to do. It's interesting comment because I've had several friends that live out in that area, and they want restaurants out that way.
Yeah, it's a natural.
So, exactly,
It's a natural.
it would be a natural
I
in
think
that
it's,
area.
I think it would be a great idea to have restaurants out there, and I see the need. The problem I have is the location right across from the school. It won't matter this time of year, but while school's in, restaurants naturally have people coming and going all times of the day.
We have tried to look very carefully at the ingress egress, especially for the property here versus the school. And so the suggestions, we just simply complied with the suggestions, which was to tie the ingress egress equally with the school's access points. And I guess if we went in to try to get a slowdown lane, because that was one of the comments, if you went in to try to get a slowdown lane, we'd have to have the state's approval to do that. We'd have to go back to the state to ask them for permission to do it.
And just state approval to just.
Drive-through, correct? I mean, or, I'm just wondering, or Mike would they just
Be room to work within the existing right of way. There's gonna be some dedication of right of way. If you're heading southbound, of course, you already have the continuous turn lane that's already in the pavement. So it'd be an issue of, is there a need for a decel lane if you're heading northbound?
So what
Is
did,
that the turn lane that you're talking about, that's the one that they speed up to 60 miles an hour and pass all the other cars?
Yes, sir, all the way through.
Yeah.
That's correct.
what was, on our bond package, what was approved on Calvin? Some kind of.
to make it
Another
four,
turn lane or something like that?
well, just to make it 4 lanes on the other side of the,
Oh, okay.
east side of the roadway to match
So that's
what's on Rosebud.
like that.
We just believe as a developer, we try to look at different avenues to make this a positive impact for the city. We do believe that, and we're certainly welcome, we welcome comments, we really do. And if we can make this a better project than what we've designed.
Is this the finished blueprint? There's gonna be a lot of land on the backside.
Today, all that land funds are in there. I find this is a fairly good-sized project. It's not a massive project, and I don't know the developer has really the wherewithal or desire to make it even.
It's much better than it was before.
Thank you.
And I like it compared to what's on already that they could build. This new plan, I like a lot better, so. I don't know how it's controlled. Will any of the businesses come back to us?
Right now, if it's allowed by right with Matt and zoning district, they wouldn't have to come back before you, unless you wrote some sort of provision to come back before for approval. To answer your question, any future expansion of that site plan would be required to do a PD amendment to bring that site plan back, showing the future expansions.
Any other questions? Thank you. Excuse me?
Now, one last question I had so since you've moved it, to 663, now will this be leaving kind of this back portion for future expansion in the back now? Or you're gonna consume the whole property now?
No, we're not consuming, we're only consuming to this point.
Okay, and for the future expansion, that will be, storage facility?
Yeah. Oh, for the if there were a future expansion, it would only, if you're saying, if we expanded in the future, would it only be self-storage? And so the answer would be yes. But I don't know that we're gonna expand it, and even if we wanted to expand, we would need the permission of the council again. We'd have to come back and revisit it, and we'd have to revisit the tree line, we'd have to revisit the detention ponds, we'd have to revisit the traffic. You know, those are things that would have to come up, and if or when the opportunity presented itself to expand, we'd have this conversation all over again, and be able to listen to, okay, here's what we thought, here's what the reality is, here's what the new thought is. And as a reminder, I was just gonna let you know, the developers, they are local to Midlothian. They live just south of this property too, so they're very familiar with the traffic that we're dealing with. They're intimate with it, so they're very close to this property.
And just so you know, if you were entering and leaving off McAlpin, I would be viewing this completely differently. But
Yeah, we just don't own that piece.
no, I know, I understand. I'm just kind of letting you. I don't have a problem with what you're trying to do.
I appreciate that, I do. And if there was an opportunity here, I think that I've heard just, you know, in the back, the various things that are being talked about here, we just don't have any control.
I'm not stating that you should. I'm just letting you know, I don't have a problem with your project.
I appreciate
Just
it.
getting in and getting out.
Thank you. Are there any other concerns or anything I could address? I appreciate your time, really. Thank you.
Have a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
And a second, before you vote, please.
The only thing that I hope we could do is I do like what Marcos had mentioned about placing a general professional limitation on it.
Was that general professional or professional office?
Well, whatever, you guys are the pros, so.
That just may be your recommendation, because those are, general professional allow for restaurant, light retail.
No.
Professional office would only allow for
Well,
office.
let me ask you a question. If a restaurant went in there, if they got one of those places, is it sufficient distance from the church and the school to where they couldn't sell liquor?
Oh, we'd have to measure that out. I think the church, they meet the requirements for the church, but the school, I don't think they'd meet those requirements because it's property line to property line. And so the property line of this project would, be right here, you measure straight across. So they wouldn't meet the distance requirements for the school to serve, to meet the state requirements for alcohol.
Joe, can we make a requirement that any type of retail or restaurant use just has to come back through an SUP?
You can, but you've already got, you already got a plan development, and you already got the SUP requirement in it. So then you're gonna have another layer on top of that, and this particular plan development, so my concern is, you've got, at some point in time, that may get missed, because you have a plan development with an SUP requirement inside it. So maybe either just a list of what's permitted, not permitted, or come back and amend the plan development at a later date if that use wants to go in. Because remember, because if we put a requirement in there for restaurant, has to be allowed by SUP, you cannot base that decision on whether or not it will be for the sale of alcohol.
Right.
Right. And I'm sitting here thinking, dry cleaner is a natural right there. Whatever, a Subway, whatever is gonna be closer to those subdivisions, whatever closest to the schools for quick and easy delivery after school pickups. I could see, a lot of businesses wanting to go in there with 1,000 to 2,000 square foot footprint.
Did you say Subway, as in Subway Eatery?
Yes.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm trying to keep out of there.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, a dry cleaner right next door, right after you pick them up at school, let's swing by the dry cleaner. There's a lot of, scenarios that I could see that, if we don't tighten it down.
Oh, yeah, no,
They're in and out all the
I'm
time.
following you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get is a way to, if that's the council's desire, is to limit those uses,
That's my
I don't
thought.
know.
You can even put a list of uses that are, you can
So
put
just
that.
add the list of.
Okay.
I think basically the developer of that
We don't want to
gets
stop it.
the type of,
Instead of, maybe an option is, instead of doing it up here from the guy's side is table, bring it back with that list. So you can.
I just talked to the applicant, they were fine if it was narrowed down to professional office, and they said if any other use comes before, they would come back for even
but
amendment.
you said restaurants could go in professional.
Under general professional, if you only allow for professional offices.
Office, then that's.
What about the dry cleaner, things that are not restaurant type uses?
No, there'd only be
Yeah,
professional offices.
So just CPAs, attorneys,
Consultants. and
What
so
would
forth.
be the list under professional office?
Generally it would be, architects, CPAs, real estate agents.
I have a doctor's office in
Uh,
there.
You could have a doctor's office under a professional
Dentist or
office.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, got a lot of people.
Right.
Okay. If we can include that.
Professional office.
But it just sounds like, so we're not looking for anything that's high traffic, retail, restaurants, cleaners, any of those types of things. I just wanna make sure
Not right
we're
now.
all on the same page.
Until I get a better feel for the traffic flow, then I'll be able to make a better decision.
So that we can help write, when we amend this ordinance, so we know exactly what we're looking at.
Yes.
Or, in this case, excluding out.
Do they have to go through a traffic study out there in that area, or can we require that?
Hey, Mike,
We can.
technically, could we require a traffic study be done for this?
Right in that area?
You can do one on, again,
It's generally
kind of based on
civil.
what the uses might be, but again, is it 1,000 square foot facilities, is it 5,000?
Well, and is it a restaurant or is it a professional office?
Right. I mean,
The TIA would have to be
And
defined.
really, when you look at it again, I know the continuous center turn lane creates issues, but it's there for turning movements. And so really, the only thing you would be looking at is, do you need to do some kind of deceleration lane? So if you're heading northbound, if council wants that, I would put that in, because what will happen is if you look at text stop requirements, it won't meet the threshold.
Right.
So they'll go through and they'll come in and text, I think it's like 60 turn movements in an hour. I don't think you'll have that, and so you won't have, text will come back, so you don't have to do a deceleration lane because it doesn't meet our threshold. So that's really is a concern, that it would need to be written in and made part of what's being approved.
That they want to decel.
Correct.
The only reason that I think a deceleration lane is because of trucks with trailers and boats and things like that. And I know how those people drive out there. And I know we all laugh and joke about that center lane. It's a freeway. It's a freeway with and they drive nuts down that center lane.
And as council knows, I mean, council's been authorizing the staff to go in and we've been, through development agreements, through impact fee reimbursements, through city projects. I mean, we're putting in auxiliary lanes, turn
Right.
lanes, things like that. So the intent is to continue to allow for, keep main lanes open, let people pass and continue to go through in the main lane instead of using, set of turn lanes and things like that from a safety standpoint.
I think we need the deceleration.
I agree. And, I have to say, even though I don't like it, there's a lot of people that live out there that would like to have something that they could grab a subway or whatever, not have to drive all the way back into town. That would maybe eliminate some traffic on Sixth Street.
Well, I like to make it go so.
I'm just saying that there will be a time where we're gonna have to address, some restaurants or.
Well, I feel like we made
Restaurant.
an agreement with the shopping center when we put them in there to do everything we could do to help them direct traffic that way, so. It's fine, either way.
Is there enough support for the deceleration lane?
I don't know, I support it.
I support it. Enough support for what?
Deceleration lane. Now, what if that text dot doesn't want to do it, so what happens then?
Well, the text won't let you do it, you can't do it. So, but you can ask. You know, and they probably, to be honest with you, they may or may not, but
And as far as the applicant's concerned.
how does that work, Mike?
Typically, again, normally TxDOT's not gonna say you're adding additional capacity, we won't let you do it. I mean, they have their thresholds, and again, sometimes they're pretty high when you look at it. For a farm market road, again, I mean, I think it's 60 from the speed limit. As the speed limit drops, then your threshold goes down to some extent, but in the past, well, we've always, anything we've taken to them, if it's something that's gonna be done, and it's not gonna be a TxDOT project, but it meets their standards and requirements, they've not turned us down. So again, I don't think they're gonna say you have too much capacity, or you're allowed for too many turn movements, because it becomes a safety. So anything that's safety related, anything that increases mobility, they haven't turned us down on any requests that we've taken for them.
Well, we found out
Yes, sir.
when we don't have a deceleration lane is where we're going back and filling in and putting deceleration lane. That we're having to go back and do that. So that's why I think we need one. Okay.
I can support that, yeah.
Wayne?
No. I mean, it'd be good to have that. I think sometimes we're making overkill on these things.
Well, it's across the street from the school.
I understand,
Okay. So I understand.
I mean, I'm with Wayne, I think it'd be nice to have, but I don't think it's a deal breaker for me personally.
My input is, what, 700 feet, 900 feet north of an intersection with a light already. So, I don't know. I could go either way on it. I'll defer to, TxDOT.
What'll happen, Mike, especially if you're coming from the south, and obviously, cause I come off Tower Road every day, so I've got a good feel for the traffic flows. We've talked about light down in McAlpin, but when the traffic flow's flowing, they're in blocks. So, you've got a whole block of traffic, sometimes that's 8 to 12 cars deep, and then there's some stragglers after them. So you've got this 8 to 12 cars deep coming from the light, and you've got 2 or 3 cars that need to turn into these professional buildings out of that group for whatever reason. I guess that's kind of, am I thinking right that this slow down turn-in lane is going to help with off-spill from that and allow traffic to keep flowing?
Not if you're going southbound. If you're going southbound, you'll be sitting in the center turn lane.
In the center
Wanting to
turn
turn left, so you have to wait for all the northbound
I'm
traffic.
sorry,
to
I
clear.
apologize. I'm coming from McAlpin going north.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I apologize.
Yes, yes.
That's why I didn't make myself.
Yes, yes, so
So
you're going-
I'm looking at this to alleviate that bam, 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 stack up,
What you'd be looking at if you do a decel lane is basically you can slow down to a safe turning, speed, but you're not turning from the main lane, of 663. You're turning from a designated lane that you're completely off the main lane. Cars can continue to go by you at the current rate of speed or faster, which they seem to do. It also alleviates the potential of somebody, as you're slowing down and turning, let's say you are doing that, of using the center turn lane to go around, which is not there for, but it happens all the
The
time.
only other thing I'm thinking is, against what I just mentioned is that then that provides a break for me to get out when I'm up on Tower Road or what's that, cross highway there, but there's other folks trying to get onto where that just creates another break in those cars coming to the north, so.
Well, one more comment I have about the decel lane is that if you go just not too many feet, I don't know how many feet it is, to the other driveway of the school, and then you have the exit to where the people are coming out of the school, where we have to have an officer there in the morning, and I think maybe in the afternoon, I'm not sure, but he's out there directing the traffic, and then if somebody doesn't want to wait, and there's a truck that's turning into that storage, and they'll say, woo, and they'll whip over into that center lane and accelerate, it's too dangerous. It's, without that lane.
Anywhere on 662 is dangerous, period. I mean, that goes without saying. And I think right here, the fact that it's 700 feet down the road is a red line. You know, if they're gonna turn right up there, they're not gonna go very far before they turn right. I know they get a lot of speed.
I'm there every day, I'm right there. I turn down that street and I see the cars, and I've even tried to get the chief to give me a ticket book to let me go. He won't do it, but, which is probably a good thing, but,
I guess a positive is when 14th is open, maybe some of that traffic that would come down to Route 663 would be eliminated. That could be at least